With Victor Wembayama taking over the NBA with his freakish size and skill, it made me think about the craziest freaks of nature from the NBA's past. Guys with crazy size and athleticism, and it got me thinking, what happened to them? First up is one of the biggest players in NBA history, Taco Fall. By the time he was 15 years old, he had already grown to be 7'3" and eventually went on to play college basketball at UCF, where he became a fan favorite and a really good player as well. He was Conference Defensive Player of the Year in 2017, and in his senior year in 2019 led UCF to the NCAA tournament, where they ultimately lost in the second round by just 1 point to a really memorable Duke team led by Zion Williamson. Fall's incredible size caught the attention of NBA scouts, ultimately earning him an invite to the NBA Draft Combine, and there he truly established himself as a unique player physically, setting a new record for height with shoes, standing reach, and most impressively, wingspan at over 8 feet. NBA teams were intrigued and wanted to try and figure out a way to get his incredible length on the floor defensively. Unfortunately for Fall, though, his lack of foot speed and offensive game caused him to go undrafted in 2019 despite his incredible size. The Celtics were intrigued enough, however, to offer him a spot on their Summer League roster, and he was impressive there, shooting nearly 80% from the field. Boston then signed Fall to a two-way deal that allowed him to go back and forth from the G League. Although he did eventually suit up for the Celtics for a few games, he did most of his work in the G League, averaging a double-double and earning all-defense team honors. Over the next few years in Boston and Cleveland, there was hope that he would get real NBA minutes, including getting his first ever NBA start in December 2021 with the Cavs, but ultimately, unless he wanted to keep playing in the G League, Fall was going to have to look elsewhere to get meaningful minutes. As a result, in 2022, he signed with the Chinese Basketball Association, and despite returning for Summer League in 2023, continues to play professionally outside of the US. Fall's incredible size has obviously been a huge benefit for him, but it made him a poor fit for the fast-paced style of play in today's NBA, and without legit perimeter shooting ability, it's hard to find a place for him in the league right now. Next up now is everybody's favorite slam dunk champion, Nate Robinson. He was drafted in the first round in 2005 despite being listed at just 5'9" and 180 pounds. And players at that size simply aren't supposed to make an impact in the NBA, but Robinson was an unbelievable athlete and a good offensive player. At one point, his vertical was measured at over 43 inches, one of the best in NBA history, which allowed him to do things on the floor that just shouldn't be possible for a guy his size. He did manage to make some noise in the NBA, finishing his career as an 11 point per game scorer overall, but the most notable accomplishment for him was certainly his performances in the slam dunk contest. He won the contest in 2006, 2009, and 2010, including some of the most memorable dunks ever seen in the event. Other than that, his best season in the NBA was in the 2008-2009 season, where he averaged over 17 points per game with the Knicks, and over time he continued to contribute as a spark plug scoring guard. Over the years, however, his size became more and more of a liability as his skills and athleticism declined, and his NBA career ended after just playing in 2 games in the 2015-16 season. He did have some success overseas, including winning the 2017 LPB championship and being named Grand Final MVP, and outside of basketball, Robinson signed with the Seattle Seahawks practice squad in 2016, appeared in the movie Uncle Drew in 2018, and lost a professional boxing match in 2020. Certainly an interesting career for an unbelievable and extremely memorable athlete. Back to the big guy side of things now with another fan favorite, Boban Marjanovich. He came to the NBA a bit late in his career in 2015 at 27 years old, signing a 1-year deal with the San Antonio Spurs. At 7'4" with huge hands, he actually was a pretty skilled offensive player, showing the ability to make an occasional jump shot. In comparison to Taco Fall, who we talked about earlier, his skill set was much more advanced offensively. He played in 54 games as a rookie in San Antonio, including 4 starts, and looked like he could be a solid rotation player in the league. Fortunately for him, this was the perfect time to enter into free agency, as the cap spike in the summer of 2016 allowed teams to hand out much bigger contracts than normal. That summer, Boban signed a 3-year, $21 million contract with the Pistons, a massive upgrade from the 1-year, $1.2 million deal he signed a year earlier with the Spurs. Despite the big contract, he actually didn't play a ton for Detroit, mostly when the other bigs got in foul trouble, but he had some memorable moments, including a career-high 27 points in a win against Houston late in the year. In 2018, he was moved to the Clippers as part of the Blake Griffin trade, and his trend of being an end-of-the-bench rotation big continued for the next few stops as well in Philadelphia and Dallas. As of this recording, Boban has still managed to stick around in the league with the Houston Rockets despite now being 35 years old. He's a beloved teammate and has actually been pretty effective when given an opportunity to play, but his incredible size limits how much he can play at one time, and similarly to Taco Fall, the league just isn't built for guys of his physical profile anymore. But still an awesome story for Boban. Moving on now to one of my favorite players ever, Gerald Green. He came to the NBA straight out of high school in in 2005 and was an unbelievable athlete, a 5-star recruit and an All-American dunk contest champion, and the Celtics picked him at 18th overall. What made him special was a vertical that measured around 40 inches, and that combined with his 6'7" frame allowed him to pull off some of the craziest in-game dunks I have ever seen. He started his career with the Celtics but got limited playing time because he was so young, mostly only being known for winning the NBA Slam Dunk Contest in 2007 after a few years in the league. After that season, he was moved to the Timberwolves as part of a package for Kevin Garnett, and that looked like a great situation for him to finally get some playing time and develop his game. Unfortunately for Green, that just never really happened, and as he bounced around to a few other teams, it seemed unlikely that he would ever become an NBA rotation player, and his decision to skip college and go straight to the NBA seemed to be a mistake. In 2009, he decided to go and play overseas for a few seasons before returning to the at the time named NBA D-League in 2011, and that is where his path back to the NBA really started. He was named a D-League All-Star that season, and teams started to take notice. In February of 2012, he finally got the call. The New Jersey Nets signed Green to a 10-day contract, and he immediately impressed, averaging over 12 points per game over the 31 games left in that season for the Nets, completing his NBA comeback. In addition to his crazy athleticism, Green had added a lot of skill to his offensive game, making him a much better fit as a role player on the wing. From there, he signed a deal with the Pacers, Suns, Heat, Celtics, and Houston, providing valuable minutes and shooting at every single spot. As he got older, though, his game started to slip, and in December 2020, the Rockets waived him, and despite briefly coming out of retirement in 2022, at that point, Green had played his last NBA game. Still, though, his story is certainly an impressive one, first as an insane athlete and dunker, and ultimately as a productive NBA player for years, despite the ups and downs it took him to finally get there. Moving on now to everybody's favorite goofball, JaVale McGee. You might be wondering why JaVale is on this list, but I've always kind of thought of him as an outlier player physically in the NBA. At 6'11" with a 7'6" wingspan and crazy athleticism, his body control and fluidity is incredibly rare for people his size, and part of what made him at times a really effective NBA player. He came to the league in 2008, drafted 18th overall by the Washington Wizards, and I honestly always thought he was pretty good. He needed to be more disciplined, but his athleticism allowed him to have a big impact on both ends of the floor when he was locked in. Unfortunately for him, too often his on-court antics would upset the team that he was on, so he ended up bouncing around a lot. He went from Washington to Denver to Philly to Dallas before finally finding a home in Golden State. The Warriors found a way to make McGee an effective player finally by simply playing him in limited minutes. He would go out there and use all of his energy for like 4 minutes and then get taken out, and honestly, he was one of the most effective per minute players that the Warriors had. A great offensive rebounder, good at protecting the rim, a good lob threat, exactly what he always should have been in the NBA. As a result, he helped them win the 2017 and 2018 NBA titles, a true redemption story for a player that many had written off as an NBA player at that point. After the Warriors, he ended up on the Lakers and was helpful for them too as they won the 2020 title, and he still managed to stick around on the Suns, back to the Mavericks again, and now with the Sacramento Kings. He's never been able to be a super effective starting caliber center, as evidenced by his most recent stint in Dallas, where they signed him to a long-term contract and then dumped him a year later, but his combination of size, length, and athleticism was certainly rare and allowed him to have an eventful but solid NBA career. Last up now is one of the most impressive small guy scorers I have ever seen, Isaiah Thomas. At just 5'9" and selected with the last pick in the 2011 NBA draft, a productive NBA career did not seem likely for Thomas. He was a really good high school player and a great scorer in college, but 5'9" guys are just not supposed to make it in the NBA. But almost immediately, it was clear that Thomas wasn't just another small guard. He was immediately productive for the Kings, starting 37 games as a rookie and averaging over 11 points per game, and things continued to grow from there as he became a 20-point per game scorer by his third season in the league, and that's simply incredible. The Suns took notice and swung a trade for Thomas, but the fit was a bit weird there because they already had a few good guards, so after just 46 games in Phoenix, the best thing that ever could have happened for Thomas happened. He ended up getting traded to the Boston Celtics. Now at this point, it was clear that Thomas was a good scorer, but nobody could expect what happened next. In his second full season with the Celtics, Thomas averaged almost 29 points per game and made second team All-NBA, leading the Celtics to the playoffs as one of the best offensive players in the entire league. The whole Celtics team that year was centered around his ability to score, and he delivered. That postseason was also extremely tragic for him as he lost his sister, and his story that year was really inspiring. Unfortunately for Thomas, he never got back to anything close to the production that he showed that season again, as he dealt with injury issues in Cleveland and LA after being swapped out of Boston in exchange for Kyrie Irving. He did bounce around to a few teams, but was last seen in the NBA in 2022 for the Hornets, a pretty sudden drop off for him, but still at 5'9" to average that many points and make second team All-NBA is extremely impressive. And that's what happened to these NBA freaks of nature.